on October 23rd, 2025. We're pleased to be joined by our guest presenter, Dr. Michelle Gordy, who is the Director of Watershed Science for the North Saskatchewan Watershed Alliance. Dr. Gordy's presentation is titled Transforming Watershed Management, Introducing the Freshwater Health Index to Alberta. Michelle, if you're all set, the floor is over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me here today. I'm really excited to talk to you about the Freshwater Health Index. But before I get started, I would like to just, in the spirit of respect and reciprocity, acknowledge that the traditional land on which the North Saskatchewan River watershed resides is in Treaty 6 and Treaty 8 territory and the Métis homeland. We deeply respect and wish to honor the diverse Indigenous peoples whose ancestors' footsteps have marked this territory since time immemorial, including the Cree, Dene, Saulteaux, Nakota Sioux, Blackfoot, and Métis peoples. And we further acknowledge that this territory is home of one of the largest communities of Inuit south of the 60th parallel. So in this presentation today, I will provide a high-level overview of the Freshwater Health Index, how it was implemented for State of the North Saskatchewan River watershed reporting, and the ongoing work that we're now doing to expand its utility for other groups across Alberta. To set the scene, I want to provide some context for why the NSWA is taking a new approach to State of the Watershed reporting and trying to build a bridge for other WPACs and watershed stewardship groups. And I'll do that by highlighting the underlying issue. State of the Watershed reporting in Alberta is mandated to the WPACs through Water for Life as one of our primary activities and as an aspect of the adaptive management cycle. The purpose of a State of the Watershed report is to provide a baseline condition assessment on the health of the watershed to guide management and planning. But the process is not standardized across the province, and there's very little guidance on what is expected from a State of the Watershed report, like the methods and the indicators to be used. Additionally, the connections between the State of the Watershed reports and management levers and monitoring priorities are absent, which leaves a big gray area in terms of how a State of the Watershed report is used for decision-making support. We as WPACs use the State of the Watershed to guide integrated watershed management planning, but actioning those plans is completely voluntary, and we have no process or official commitment or streams of funding dedicated to fulfilling the goals set within these plans. WPACs have very limited capacity, and having very limited funds and technical expertise in-house sometimes leads to the necessity for many of us to hire contractors to complete these reports or to extend the amount of time between reports, continuing the process in a very disjointed manner. So there's a need to create some sort of standardization and to create better connections here so that we're managing watersheds more effectively together. The NSWA sought a guiding framework for State of the Watershed reporting by researching other approaches outside of the province, and we came across the Freshwater Health Index, which was developed by Conservation International. So I'll refer to this in brief as the FHI. What we're looking for was a process that was scientifically rigorous and repeatable, but also flexible, so we could better link the assessment of indicators of watershed health to monitoring and management levers specific to Alberta. The FHI fit this bill, and so now I'm going to talk about what the FHI is and how we've applied it as a framework for State of the Watershed reporting for the North Saskatchewan River, which I'll often refer to as the NSR. And then I'll get into how we hope to continue to improve this approach such that we're addressing some of the larger systematic issues. So the FHI is more than just an index. It's a framework for creating a more holistic approach to ecosystem health assessments that evaluates ecosystem vitality, or the key attributes needed to maintain functioning aquatic ecosystems, ecosystem services, or the ability of an ecosystem to provide a variety of benefits to humans, and governance and engagement, which looks at the structures, processes, and supports for decision-making that impacts aquatic ecosystems. The Freshwater Health Index is applied within a basin to inform policy and management actions. For the North Saskatchewan River watershed, which is about 58,000 square kilometers of land that drains into the river, We divided the assessment to examine differences among 4 river reaches that better separate the landscape by ecoregion and land uses. So as you'll see in this figure on the left, the 4 river reaches are the alpine, foothills, parkland, and prairie. Each of the conceptual dimensions of the Freshwater Health Index is assessed through a series of indicators and sub-indicators that examine the strongest signals of watershed condition that can be applied to any basin. For ecosystem vitality, these are water quantity, water quality, basin condition, and biodiversity and habitat. For ecosystem services, the indicators are provisioning, regulating, and cultural services. And the governance and engagement indicators look at enabling environment, engagement, vision and adaptive governance, and effectiveness. The sub-indicators that aren't shown here can be standardized or modified to incorporate additional measures as appropriate. The only stipulation is that sub-indicators are assessed through indices that result in a score between 0 and 100. So this approach has proved advantageous within the NSR assessment for incorporating brand new indicators that have been developed by the province, providing a way to directly align with ongoing monitoring programs and condition assessments. So let's briefly look at an example of this. One of the new GOA indicators is stream connectivity, which looks at the degree of connectivity within stream systems through the probability of movement through different types of man-made barriers like culverts. It's summarized at a Huck 8 scale across the whole province, and this is what it looks like if we pull out just the data for the NSR watershed and color code them by their scores. What we can do then is take these results and summarize them for our river reaches as so. The scores here are the geometric mean of the underlying Huck 8 scores within the boundaries of the river reaches. So now we have scores to plug and play into our assessment of habitat condition as a component of the biodiversity and habitat indicator within the ecosystem vitality dimension. So this is a very quick and simplified example of sub-indicator assessments, but I hope it provides a visual for how we get to the final stage, which is the most important, communicating the results. So here you're seeing a high-level perspective of the resulting scores from the state of the NSR watershed using the Freshwater Health Index. The results are displayed as colorful wheels that highlight which sub-indicators are indicative of good condition, being the bluer colors, and those showing where work is needed to improve watershed health, being those on the more orange side. So these colors correspond with the numerical scores as shown on the diagram on the left. And the sub-indicators in gray indicate knowledge and monitoring gaps. In the center of each of these wheels is a number, which is the composite score for the dimension to provide a high-level perspective of condition. Furthermore, the dimensions that represent more subjective content like governance and ecosystem services, weights are applied to the indicators to scale the scores to stakeholder perspectives of relative importance so that they align with set priorities. So let's zoom in a bit and look at some examples from the results from the state of the watershed for the North Saskatchewan River. I'm not going to go into any details or cover every dimension as that would require a much longer presentation, but what I'm hoping to highlight for you is how the FHI is able to quickly communicate some key results from a high-level perspective for decision makers without having to read a long report or have a strong science background to understand what's going on. So this is the ecosystem vitality dimension summarized for the entire North Saskatchewan River watershed. This dimension is the most similar to our typical state of the watershed assessment process in terms of what it is evaluating. So immediately you can see that there are some knowledge gaps. Wetland intactness and macroinvertebrate communities are in gray. We can see that the lowest scoring indicator is biodiversity and habitat, and that within, the lowest scoring sub-indicator is habitat condition. And this was driven by low scores attained for all the indices used to assess it, but primarily interior habitat and landscape connectivity are in dark orange. On the other side of the coin, we can also see that water quality has scored the highest among the indicators, and that the other two, water quantity and basin condition, are in the middle. Overall, this format provides a way to prioritize where action is most needed. Likewise, we can more easily set management objectives. What score do we want to achieve? Now, this doesn't negate the need for a narrative summary and a more detailed look at the results as we would traditionally do. So those aspects are provided as well within the final report. The point I'm trying to make is that the FHI offers a new way to communicate results that better align with decision makers in their priorities, in their limited time available to review such reports, and to prioritize actions going forward. It also gives watershed managers like WPACs an easier way to make connections between signals from the environment and how that translates into monitoring and management needs. I also want to talk a little bit about the governance and engagement dimension because it is perhaps the biggest change to the state of the watershed process in this framework, though arguably evaluating ecosystem services is a big change too. Here, the assessment is based completely on stakeholder and rights holder perspectives and is evaluated through survey methods. Why is this important? Well, it's important because just like everything within a watershed is connected, having a healthy watershed leads to more benefits for humans and greater long-term sustainability. If we don't have a good governance structure and processes to ensure equitability and effectiveness within the system, it will fall apart, and our efforts to constantly restore the landscape will be fraught with continuous frustration and little progress because we haven't fixed the underlying issues. So by evaluating stakeholder and rights holder perspectives on many different topics of watershed governance, we begin an important conversation about what needs to be done to create a better system. Overall, there are many benefits to using the Freshwater Health Index for state of the watershed assessments. It combines ecological integrity with ecosystem services and water resources governance. Ecosystems are at the heart of the assessment to help decision makers consider connections between ecosystem protection and human benefits. It gathers stakeholders for collaborative integrated water resources management to make results as relevant as possible to the local decision context. And it measures stakeholder perception on various governance topics and the relative importance stakeholders give to different indicators. Other types of benefits for using the FHI for state of the watershed assessments include the fact that it is a freely available framework, it's adaptable and scalable, and scientifically supported with multiple peer-reviewed publications. It was also developed by an 18-member science working group of university researchers from across the globe, and they were all experts on a wide variety of disciplines. Additionally, there are a number of pre-made tools, training materials, and resources which are available, and I'll talk about how we're planning to improve these as we go. So in addition to the FHI being used for the first time in North America through our assessment of the North Saskatchewan River watershed, it's been implemented in over 10 countries and translated into 7 different languages, and conceptually, it's been proven an effective method. But because this is the first time it's been used in North America, there are ways in which the framework can be better developed for regional contexts, specifically in Alberta context. And much of my work over the past couple years has been focused on this while applying it to the watershed. So now that the state of the NSR watershed is complete and will be made publicly available soon, I want to talk about the work we're undertaking to expand upon building the FHI as a framework, testing its utility and scalability in other contexts. So this year, the NSWA was lucky to have received a high-impact grant from the Alberta EcoTrust Foundation to complete a 2-year collaborative project to refine and improve the FHI as a framework and to better understand what would make it a more usable product for other WPACs, watershed stewardship groups, and others who want to assess the condition of a watershed. The project has 4 objectives. The first is to develop a manual and templates package to provide detailed guidance on adapting the FHI framework to a local context, including data sets and methods, to assist WPACs and other groups conducting state of the watershed reports. The hope for this objective is that we can provide a toolbox that reduces the capacity required to complete an assessment. The second objective is testing scalability and applicability. So we'll be conducting 2 additional pilots of the use of the FHI in 2 scalable contexts. The Vermilion River Watershed is a sub-basin of the NSR and also the Athabasca Watershed. So these two additional pilots of the FHI will provide lessons learned from different geopolitical contexts and experiences that will refine the manual and templates package. The third objective is to evaluate capacity and barriers to completing state of the watershed assessments across the province. We aim to identify the capacity needs and barriers through stakeholder and Indigenous rights holders surveys to better understand these barriers in context. This information will be used to refine the manual and templates package, as well as define future work that's needed to reduce barriers and increase capacity. The final objective is to build local and scientific credibility by publishing findings in an academic journal and through presentations to share lessons on adapting and applying the FHI in Alberta. Through this objective, we aim to share the work broadly to increase awareness. So I mentioned that this is a collaborative project, and indeed it would not be completed without the dedicated work of the Athabasca Watershed Council and the Vermilion River Watershed Alliance, who will be piloting the FHI as a framework for state of reporting in their watersheds, as well as providing learnings from those experiences. Other organizations involved in this work, including the Alberta Water Council, are providing an advisory role to the project and specific deliverables. We're looking at this framework as a tool to provide to others across the province, and that requires a broader perspective than what I've attained through my experience alone. So bringing it all together now, what we've done is take a global framework for ecosystem health assessments and applied it to a watershed in Alberta as a proof of concept that this framework can successfully be used for state of the watershed reporting. Now we're working to test the scalability and flexibility of this framework in other watersheds in Alberta so that we can develop tools that empower others to more easily use the framework. Here we're operating on the teach a man to fish principle in hopes that greater adoption of this framework will be possible across Alberta because we've made the process more streamlined, provided tools and resources, and have considered the capacity and barriers to groups who want to or have to assess the condition of their watersheds. We believe that the Freshwater Health Index offers many benefits towards this goal. It offers a method to build standardization for the reporting process while remaining flexible. It provides better measurable links between monitoring efforts and management levers. And through our work at NSWA and with our partners at Athabasca and the Vermilion River Watershed Alliance, it will be a process adapted to not just a general Alberta context, but one informed through different real-world experiences in different geopolitical contexts. With that, I would like to say thank you so much for your attention. I've included my email here in case anyone would like to contact me directly, and I'd love to chat more, so please let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.